Some forms of exhaustion are easy to recognize. A tired body after a long day. Heavy eyes after too little sleep. Muscles asking for rest. But there is another kind of exhaustion. A quieter one. An exhaustion that accumulates slowly through years of emotional carrying. Years of being available. Years of anticipating needs before they are spoken. Years of monitoring the emotional weather of other people's lives. Not because anyone demanded it. Not always. But because somewhere along the way, responsibility became a way of feeling safe. And eventually, what began as caring became constant vigilance. The nervous system stopped asking, "What do I need?" and started asking, "What does everyone else need from me?" Without noticing it, an entire life can begin revolving around that question. Most people who carry too much do not notice it immediately. The weight arrives gradually. A conversation here, a responsibility there, a problem that needs solving, a crisis that needs managing, a disappointment that needs absorbing. One day becomes 1 year. 1 year becomes 10, and slowly, emotional labor becomes invisible. Not because it disappears, because it becomes normal. The body learns how to function while tired. The heart learns how to keep giving while depleted. The mind learns how to remain alert even during peaceful moments. From the outside, everything appears stable, capable, reliable, strong. But beneath the surface, something else is happening. The nervous system is carrying far more than anyone can see, including the person carrying it. Eventually, the body begins speaking, not dramatically, not all at once, but quietly, through fatigue that sleep cannot fully repair, through a loss of enthusiasm for things once enjoyed, through a strange inability to completely relax. Nothing is wrong, and yet something feels heavy. The shoulders remain slightly elevated. The jaw remains slightly tight. The mind continues scanning for the next responsibility, the next problem, the next person who might need something. Even in silence, even during rest, part of the system remains on duty, as though life is asking for constant readiness, as though peace is only temporary, as though vigilance itself has become a permanent occupation. Sometimes, late in the evening, after everyone else has gone quiet, there is a brief moment when the performance ends. No messages, no conversations, no responsibilities asking for attention, and in that small pocket of stillness, the exhaustion finally becomes visible. Not physical exhaustion alone, something deeper. The exhaustion of carrying what was never fully yours. The exhaustion of holding emotional responsibilities that quietly accumulated over the years. The exhaustion of believing that your value somehow depended on your ability to remain available. And perhaps this is where healing truly begins. Not when the burden disappears, but when you finally notice how heavy it has become. And a question gently emerges. What happens when the one who carries everyone becomes too tired to continue? Eventually, something begins to change. The body can no longer pretend. The exhaustion has become too visible, too consistent, too impossible to ignore. For the first time in years, there is a quiet admission. This cannot continue. So the pace begins slowing. Not dramatically, just enough to notice, just enough to feel, just enough to hear what the body has been whispering all along. The nervous system starts longing for something unfamiliar, not achievement, not productivity, not usefulness. Rest, real rest. Moments where nothing needs fixing. Moments where nobody needs anything. Moments where existence is enough. And for a brief period, it feels as though healing has finally begun. The burden becomes visible. The body begins speaking. The mind begins listening. Everything seems to be moving toward balance. Then something unexpected appears. Not another crisis. Not another responsibility. Not another emergency. Guilt. The guilt rarely arrives as a dramatic voice. More often, it appears as a small interruption, a phone vibration, a message notification, a familiar name on the screen. Someone is struggling. Someone needs support. Someone needs advice. And before a single word is spoken, the old autopilot takes over. Your attention immediately leaves its own home, rushing outward once again, toward another problem, another responsibility, another emotional storm. You have not answered yet. No commitment has been made. Nothing has actually happened, and yet your peace is already beginning to disappear. This is the moment most people overlook, the moment awareness quietly fades, the moment an old role steps forward before conscious choice has a chance to speak. The moment you abandon yourself long before you answer anyone else. This is why healing can feel surprisingly confusing. Part of you wants rest. Part of you understands boundaries. Part of you knows the old way is no longer sustainable. And yet another part feels deeply uncomfortable doing anything differently. Because the discomfort is not coming from the present moment. It is coming from an older emotional world. A world where being useful felt connected to being loved. A world where self-sacrifice felt connected to belonging. A world where carrying others felt safer than disappointing them. So when you do not immediately respond, anxiety appears. When you do not immediately help, anxiety appears. When you pause instead of rescuing, anxiety appears. Not because something is wrong, because an old survival strategy is losing its authority. And survival strategies rarely disappear quietly. This is the second trap many exhausted people encounter. They finally recognize the burden. They finally put the weight down, but the moment life offers another opportunity to carry it, their hand begins reaching toward the old armor. Not because the armor feels good, not because it brings peace, but because it is familiar. And familiarity often feels safer than freedom. For years, the armor protected them. The armor of responsibility, the armor of usefulness, the armor of being needed. Now healing asks for something entirely different. To remain present without immediately fixing. To witness pain without absorbing it. To care without carrying. To love without abandoning themselves. At first, this feels unnatural, even frightening. But this is where transformation begins, not when awareness appears. Awareness is only the doorway. Transformation begins when we leave the armor hanging where it is, and discover that we are still safe without wearing it. To understand why saying no can feel so difficult, we often need to look beyond the present moment, beyond the request, beyond the relationship, beyond the person standing in front of us. Because the discomfort that appears when we set a boundary is rarely created in that moment. It often belongs to a much older story, a story the body remembers even when the mind does not. Every human being enters life with a simple longing, to feel loved, to feel accepted, to feel that they belong. And belonging matters more than most people realize. For a child, belonging is not merely emotional comfort. It feels like survival. So from a very early age, the nervous system begins paying attention. What brings connection? What creates distance? What earns warmth? What creates tension? Without words, without conscious effort, a map quietly begins forming. A map that may continue guiding relationships decades later. Over time, certain patterns begin receiving rewards. Being helpful brings appreciation. Being easy creates harmony. Being responsible reduces conflict. Being accommodating feels safer than expressing disappointment. And slowly, adaptation becomes automatic. Not because anything is wrong, because human beings naturally move toward connection. The nervous system starts collecting evidence. Evidence about what appears to keep relationships secure. A simple equation begins forming beneath awareness. If I make life easier for others, I remain connected. If I become useful, I remain valued. If I avoid becoming a burden, I remain accepted. No one may ever say these words aloud, yet the body learns them anyway. And what begins as adaptation slowly becomes identity. Not because it is true, because it worked, at least for a while. Years later, life looks completely different. The people have changed, the circumstances have changed, the environment has changed, yet the old equations often remain. Helping feels like love, sacrifice feels like worth, endurance feels like goodness, and boundaries feel strangely dangerous. Not because boundaries are dangerous, because the body associates them with risk. A request appears. The nervous system reacts. Disappointment appears. The nervous system reacts. Conflict appears. The nervous system reacts. Before logic, before reflection, before conscious choice. Old fears quietly wake up. The fear of losing approval, the fear of losing connection, the fear of becoming too much, or not enough. To the thinking mind, these fears may seem irrational, yet the body is not responding to the present moment. It is responding to emotional memories that were never fully questioned. This is why saying no often feels heavier than the word itself. The discomfort is rarely about a single request. It is usually connected to a deeper question, a question hidden beneath years of adaptation, a question hidden beneath years of pleasing, a question hidden beneath years of carrying. What happens if I disappoint someone? What happens if I stop making life easier for everyone? What happens if I stop earning my place? And beneath all those questions, another question waits. A quieter one, a more vulnerable one. Will I still belong? This is where healing begins moving beyond behavior, beyond communication skills, beyond boundaries themselves, because every healthy boundary eventually asks the same thing. Can you remain connected to yourself, even when someone else is disappointed? Can you remain loyal to your own well-being, without needing universal approval? Can you believe that your belonging was never something you had to earn, that it was yours from the very beginning? Once we begin questioning the fear of losing belonging, another layer quietly comes into view, a deeper layer, a more intimate layer. Because sometimes the struggle is not about losing connection, it is about losing identity. For years, a role may have been forming beneath awareness. Not a role chosen consciously, a role built through repetition, through responsibility, through reliability, through always being the one who steps forward. And over time, The role stops feeling like something you do. It starts feeling like who you are. Helping becomes more than a behavior. It becomes a reflection, a source of meaning, a source of purpose, a source of value. Without realizing it, being needed begins feeling connected to being important. And being important begins feeling connected to being loved. There is nothing unhealthy about caring. There is nothing unhealthy about contributing. The difficulty begins when our identity becomes dependent upon those contributions. When we secretly believe that without our intervention, things will fall apart. When we begin feeling responsible for outcomes that were never ours to control. Slowly, life starts organizing itself around other people's needs, not only because we care, but because being needed creates a powerful sense of importance, a sense of control, a sense of purpose, a sense of being indispensable. Identity becomes tied to being the solver, the protector, the final shield, the person everyone turns toward when life becomes difficult. And without realizing it, being needed becomes more than a role. It becomes a source of certainty in an uncertain world, which is why letting go can feel so frightening. Because healing is not only asking us to release responsibility, it is asking us to release the illusion that everything depends on us. This is why healing can feel surprisingly uncomfortable. Not because healing is wrong, because healing creates space, and space reveals things that constant activity once concealed. The responsibilities begin decreasing, the urgency begins decreasing, the rescuing begins decreasing. And suddenly there is silence where constant motion once existed. For many people, this silence feels unfamiliar, even threatening. Because for years, identity occupied that space, the role occupied that space, the endless movement occupied that space. Now there is room to feel, room to breathe, room to notice. And one question begins quietly emerging. If I am not constantly helping, who am I? Nothing is broken, nothing is missing. An old identity is simply loosening its grip. And every identity resists dissolution, even the ones that caused suffering. Because what is familiar often feels safer than what is free. Healing eventually asks a question that no role can answer. Not, who needs you? Not, who depends on you? Not, who would struggle without you? A deeper question. Who are you when there is nothing to fix? Who are you when no one is asking for anything? Who are you when the phone remains silent? Imagine sitting in a quiet room. No messages, no emergencies, no expectations, no problems waiting for your attention. Just stillness, just breath, just awareness. Could you rest there? Could you remain there? Could you recognize your value there? Because freedom does not arrive when everyone finally stops needing you. Freedom arrives when being needed is no longer required in order to feel worthy. And healing begins the moment you discover something extraordinary. Your value was never created by the role. The role simply distracted you from seeing it. As healing deepens, another realization begins quietly emerging, one that can feel both liberating and uncomfortable. For years, many people confuse compassion with carrying, love with responsibility, care with sacrifice. The lines become blurred, so blurred that it becomes difficult to see where one ends and the other begins. If someone is hurting, we hurt. If someone is struggling, we step forward. If someone is lost, we immediately begin searching for a solution. And because these actions come from a sincere heart, they often appear loving. Yet healing invites a more difficult question. What if carrying someone's pain is not the same as loving them? What if standing beside suffering is different from removing it? What if compassion and rescue are not the same path at all? This is where many old assumptions begin unraveling. Imagine trying to hold water in your bare hands. At first, the instinct is to squeeze tighter, to hold more firmly, to prevent anything from slipping away. Yet the tighter the grip becomes, the faster the water disappears. Human growth often follows a similar pattern. Every life contains lessons that cannot be borrowed, experiences that cannot be outsourced, wisdom that cannot be transferred from one nervous system to another. Some journeys require direct experience, not because life is cruel, because transformation rarely arrives through protection alone. When someone we love struggles, our instinct is often to remove the discomfort, to solve, to protect, to intervene. Yet sometimes the discomfort itself is the doorway through which growth enters. And the lesson waiting on the other side belongs uniquely to them. When we look back at the moments that shaped us most deeply, they are rarely the moments when life became easy. They are often the moments that demanded something from us: courage, patience, discernment, resilience, the moments that forced us to meet ourselves. The moments that revealed strengths we did not know we possessed. Few of those gifts arrived because someone removed every obstacle from the road. Most arrived because life invited us to walk through the obstacle ourselves. This is one of the quiet paradoxes of compassion. When we repeatedly rescue people from every consequence, we may also rescue them from the opportunity to discover their own strength. Compassion trusts growth. Rescue often distrusts it. Compassion says, "There is something within you capable of meeting this." And sometimes that trust becomes the greatest gift we can offer. There is another truth that healing eventually reveals. Every act of rescue carries a cost, not only for the person being rescued, but for the nervous system doing the rescuing. No nervous system can endlessly absorb consequences that belong to another person. No heart can continually pour from itself without renewal. At first, the giving feels natural, then it becomes expected. Then it becomes exhausting. The care remains, but vitality begins disappearing. The love remains, but resentment quietly begins growing beneath it. This is not because compassion is wrong. It is because biology has limits. When you continuously empty your own cup to fill someone else's, you are not practicing love. You are practicing slow exhaustion. True compassion does not require you to diminish your own life force so that someone else can avoid their own growth. And every nervous system eventually asks the same question: how much of my life have I spent carrying what was never mine to carry? By now, the insight may seem clear. You understand the pattern. You understand the exhaustion. You understand the cost of rescuing. Yet understanding and transformation are not always the same thing. Because life does not test us through ideas. Life tests us through moments. A message arrives. A phone vibrates. A familiar name appears on the screen. Someone needs something. And before a single word is spoken, something begins moving inside. The body leans forward. The chest tightens. The mind starts searching for solutions. The old machinery awakens, not because you have chosen anything, because the pattern has been rehearsed thousands of times. This is why boundaries are not merely communication skills. They are nervous system skills. Long before the mouth says yes, the body has already begun negotiating. For years, these reactions happened so quickly they became invisible. The movement toward responsibility felt natural. The movement toward rescuing felt natural. The movement toward carrying felt natural. And because it felt natural, it felt true. Yet many of those reactions were never acts of conscious choice. They were acts of conditioning. A request appears. The body contracts. A disappointment appears. The body contracts. A conflict appears. The body contracts. The movement is almost instantaneous. So instantaneous that fear often disguises itself as love. Urgency disguises itself as compassion. Self-abandonment disguises itself as generosity. And this is where awareness becomes revolutionary. Because for the first time, you begin witnessing the pattern instead of becoming the pattern. And witnessing creates a space that did not exist before. The most important moment is not the answer. The most important moment is the pause before the answer. The small opening between stimulus and response. The small opening between habit and choice. The small opening between fear and freedom. The next time life places a request before you, experiment with doing nothing for a moment. Not solving, not explaining, not reassuring, just pausing. One breath, one moment of stillness, one moment of listening. And as the body begins reacting, simply become curious. What is moving inside me right now? Is this urgency? Is this fear? Is this guilt? Or is this genuine willingness? You do not need to force an answer. You do not need to change anything. Awareness itself begins changing the relationship. Because what is seen clearly can no longer operate completely unconsciously. Place a hand over your heart if it feels natural. Feel the warmth beneath your palm. Feel the chair supporting your weight. Feel the ground holding you without effort. Notice something simple. In this moment, nothing dangerous is happening. No emergency exists. No immediate action is required. The nervous system may still be preparing for battle, but reality is asking for presence, just presence. And from that place, a different kind of response becomes possible. You may still choose to help. You may still choose to say yes. You may still choose to offer support. But now, the choice emerges from freedom rather than fear, from clarity rather than guilt, from love rather than obligation. Because true boundaries do not begin when the word no is spoken. They begin the moment awareness becomes stronger than automatic survival. They begin the moment you realize, I can care deeply without abandoning myself. After all the reflection, all the awareness, all the questioning, something begins settling into place. A truth that feels surprisingly simple. Boundaries were never the problem. The guilt was, the fear was, the conditioning was. For years, many people were taught to see boundaries as rejection, as selfishness, as withdrawal. But a healthy boundary is none of those things. A healthy boundary is clarity. Clarity about what belongs to you and what does not. Clarity about where your responsibility ends and where another person's begins. Without that clarity, love becomes confused. Responsibility becomes tangled. Compassion becomes exhaustion. The truth is simple. Boundaries do not make love smaller, they make love sustainable. Many people spend years believing they must choose between kindness and self-respect, as though caring for others requires abandoning themselves, as though saying no means becoming less loving. Life reveals something different. You can love someone deeply without carrying their entire life. You can support someone without becoming responsible for their healing. You can listen without absorbing. You can care without rescuing. You can remain present without disappearing. For a nervous system conditioned by self-sacrifice, these truths can feel revolutionary, because for the first time, love is no longer measured by suffering. Worth is no longer measured by exhaustion. Connection is no longer measured by how much weight you can carry. And slowly a different relationship with yourself begins emerging. One rooted not in obligation, but in respect. There is a quiet wisdom hidden inside every healthy boundary. It begins with a simple recognition. Every life belongs to its owner. Every path belongs to its traveler. Every lesson belongs to the person living it. You can walk beside someone. You can encourage them. You can love them, but you cannot live their journey for them. For years, many people attempt to carry what was never theirs. Other people's emotions, other people's choices, other people's healing, other people's growth. And eventually the weight becomes unbearable. Not because they are weak, because they were carrying something that never belonged to them. The burden feels heavy because it was never yours to carry. The moment the truth is fully seen, something inside finally softens. Imagine standing beside a river. For years, you believed your job was to hold back the current, to protect everyone from every obstacle, to manage every outcome, to prevent every struggle. But eventually, you see what was true all along. The river already knows how to flow. Life already knows how to unfold. Other people already possess strengths that can only emerge through their own experience. The current does not need controlling. The current needs trusting. And suddenly the boundary becomes clear. You do not need to abandon yourself in order to love. You do not need to carry someone in order to care. You do not need to disappear in order to belong. A sacred boundary is simply this: I respect your journey, and I respect mine. I trust your capacity to walk your path, and I trust myself enough not to abandon my own. Because love does not ask us to disappear. Love asks us to remain fully present, including with ourselves.
Morning enters through the window like quiet gold upon the floor, but there is still an ancient winter moving softly through the bones. The tea is warm against her fingers. The sky outside is clear and blue, yet her hands still hold the porcelain, as if another storm is due. She has been the steady lighthouse through too many restless seas, holding worlds upon her shoulders, breathing tension like a creed. And somewhere deep beneath the silence, her nervous system still believes that relaxing for one moment might allow the whole thing to break. But you do not have to hold the horizon with your shoulders anymore. The world will not collapse because your body touches the floor. The sky can carry its own weight. The stars still know where they belong. You do not have to stay tense just to survive another dawn. Let the heavy armor loosen, let the ancient vigilance go. The emergency is over now. You can soften slowly. The room is safe, the war is over. No voices rising through the walls, but the body still keeps listening for footsteps that no longer come. It scans the silence for a fracture, trembles gently at the peace. Because to a heart that fought for years, stillness can feel incomplete. How exhausting it has been to prepare for storms that never came, to resist the pull of gravity while simply sitting in a chair. Like clenched hands forgetting slowly they were ever meant to open. Like a nervous system that trusted chaos more than calm. But you do not have to hold the horizon with your shoulders anymore. The world will not collapse because your body touches the floor. The sky can carry its own weight. The stars still know where they belong. You do not have to stay tense just to survive another dawn. Let the heavy armor loosen, let the ancient vigilance go. The emergency is over now. You can soften slowly. Not a sudden transformation, not a sacred flash of light, just a muscle slowly learning it no longer needs to prepare for flight. The evening wind moves softly through the curtains near the chair, and for the first time in forever, her body does not fight the air. The earth continues turning without urgency or fear, and something deep inside her begins following that rhythm. The chest expands more fully, the breath reaches all the way out, and somewhere inside the quiet, the body finally understands it survived, and it no longer has to keep surviving every moment. Sink into the gravity, let the chair receive your weight. No more carrying the weather, no more holding every wave. The night no longer asks you to remain prepared for pain. No more silent bracing, no more rehearsing storms, only quiet feeling of being held by the earth again. You do not have to stay tense to stay safe. The emergency is over. You can soften now.